Despite ranking as one of the worst farm systems in baseball over the last several years, the Atlanta Braves continue to churn out some top Rookie of the Year candidates. On today's episode, we'll look at who those players could be in 2025. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast on X at LockedOn_Braves and on Instagram at Locked On Braves. I know I haven't been there as much here lately. Going to fire that back up. Went on vacation over the weekend and enjoy some time with the family, but we'll get back after it this week. I promise you. So make sure you follow us over there. If you're new and watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Appreciate all the support that you give me there, as well as those listening on the audio version who leave me good 5-star reviews on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for all your support here at Locked On Braves. Today's episode, we're going to look at the top Rookie of the Year candidates for 2025. The Atlanta Braves just always seem to find somebody that comes out of nowhere to be in the Rookie of the Year discussion. So we'll look at who those top candidates could be, and I'll give you some sneaky sleeper picks as well on today's episode. We'll get into the latest rumblings at camp. Chris Sale, a live BP. The Braves do add some more depth to the bullpen as well. And a couple of former Braves signed some minor league deals elsewhere. We'll discuss all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. As I said in the cold open there, the Atlanta Braves seem to always find somebody that sneaks up. You weren't expecting. Nobody was talking about Spencer Schwellenbach last year. We were all looking at, when I did this podcast last year, we were talking about AJ Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrop, one of them possibly coming up and sticking in the rotation. Nobody was considering Spencer Schwellenbach, who I loved last year. The guy had made a handful of starts at high A at that point, and you just don't figure he's going to make that jump. But I guess we should figure that by now, because the Braves will tell you if you get to Double A, which he only made a couple of appearances there, and you look like you're ready, especially if the Braves have a need, they will take a chance on you. So we have to be more aware of that, I guess, going forward. We have nobody to blame but ourselves if we doubt that anybody can make that jump from high A to Double A straight to the major leagues and succeed the way that Spencer Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider, and others have done in recent years. But there just always seems to be that guy for the Atlanta Braves that nobody is thinking about, talking about, that really just comes onto the scene and helps the Braves in a big way. Maybe they don't win Rookie of the Year, but they have some sort of big contribution during the season. In many years, Spencer Schwellenbach would have won Rookie of the Year last year. As was the case, he didn't even get any votes for it. If he were in the American League last year, he probably wins the whole thing. He had that good of a year. It was just that stacked of a rookie class in the National League. So highly unfortunate, because Spencer Schwellenbach was amazing last year, a 3.35 ERA and over 20 starts, over 120 innings. Again, in most years, he's either going to win the Rookie of the Year or be right up there among the contenders. Just was a weird year in the National League where there were a lot of big-time rookies. The Braves didn't have anybody in 2023 in the Rookie of the Year voting. In 2022, Michael Harris and Spencer Strider finished 1-2 in the voting, and nobody was really expecting that going into the season. Ian Anderson in back-to-back years was in the mix in 2021, and then in 2020, and then in 2021, he finished 5th in the voting. Soroka was 2nd in 2019, and then Acuna won it in 2018. So again, since this run really started of the Braves getting to the postseason, almost every year they've had somebody finish in the top 5 in the Rookie of the Year voting, outside of just a couple of years during that time frame. So who is it going to be in 2025? Let me know in the comments section below. I see some of you already getting some of yours in as well. Braves Thrill says Baldwin is going to win Rookie of the Year. So we'll see about that. We'll talk about him more here in a second. But let me know in the comment section below who you think is going to sneak up on some radars this year and be in the Rookie of the Year conversation. Again, maybe not win it, but at least be in the conversation, get some votes at the end of the year. Let me know who you think that will be. I'm going to tell you mine here in a second. Before we get into that, I want to look at the odds on FanDuel, where you're only going to see one Brave on there, and it's really not the Brave that I am looking at. But it is Hurston Waldrop who ranks 17th right now on the odds at FanDuel at plus 7,000. So again, there's really not any Braves on the radar right now to win the NL Rookie of the Year. And again, it should be another strong class, at least at the top. You look at Roki Sasaki. Again, I have an issue with international players who come over and are eligible for Rookie of the Year, but at least Sasaki is, still pretty young. So he qualifies more than like an Ichiro that comes over that's had a whole career in Japan and then comes over and wins Rookie of the Year. But Hideo Nomo, Chipper Jones getting robbed. We won't go down that rabbit hole too much here, but Sasaki is the favorite on FanDuel at plus 200. I just honestly don't know if he's going to throw enough. I don't know that he'll throw enough innings to win it. But certainly, high expectations for him, and he has the best odds on FanDuel. Dylan Cruz is probably my favorite. If I had to pick right now, the guy to win the NL Rookie of the Year, just because I think he's going to get plenty of playing time for that Nationals team, and I think he's going to be really, really good. And again, playing all season long, you saw it with the Jackson Merrill, who played all year long last year and got all those counting stats. That thing was really good and seemed to even get better as the year went on. But Dylan Cruz would probably be my pick at the moment because I think he's going to get plenty of playing time. But he's second best odds at plus 350. Matt Shaw of the Cubs at plus 400, especially everybody's anticipating that he's going to break camp with the team. There were some questions if the Cubs went out and got an Alex Bregman that might block him, but a lot of people are excited about Matt Shaw. Bubba Chandler for the Pirates, he's at plus 850, and Jordan Lawler of the Diamondbacks at plus 1,100. We'll talk about a reason later in the podcast why that might not be very likely, but those are your top Rookie of the Year candidates. And again, Sasaki, Cruz, certainly Shaw, if he breaks camp with the team, I think those are your clear favorites going into the season. But again, even those three, I could see scenarios where it just doesn't go well for them and they don't win it. So if I were picking between the top three in the field, I'd probably take the three, or I'd probably take the field, even though I think those top three are clearly the favorites going in. And like I said, the only Braves player listed on FanDuel's odds for NL Rookie of the Year are Hurston Waldrop at 17th at plus 7,000. All right, next, I'm going to tell you who I think my top Rookie of the Year candidates are for the Atlanta Braves. Two of them are obvious, but I'm going to give you a sneaky one as well. We'll get into those here next. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Thank you as always for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, solely getting you caught up with everything happening around Major League Baseball and getting you set up for the start of the Major League Baseball season. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow here on the podcast. Again, we're back to 5 days a week, so I'll be with you every day this week, catching up on everything happening in spring training for the Braves and gearing up for the season as well. But I want to get into my top candidates for the Atlanta Braves to win the Rookie of the Year. And I'm going to start with A.J. Smith-Shawver as my top candidate. Go figure. He's my top prospect in the Braves system. He's already debuted. He's on the 40-man roster. This is about as easy as a call as it gets. And I told you when I did my prospect rankings, I fell in love with A.J. Smith-Shawver all over again, just looking at the data on his pitches and how good he can be. And I'm really excited about A.J. Smith-Shawver going into 2025. And it's not just the data, which again, data is what it is. You got to get it done on the field, but it certainly, we've grown to a point where data can generally tell us the future for a player. And the data on AJ Smith-Shawver looks really, really good at AAA. And the numbers kind of back that up. In his final 6 starts at AAA last year, 35 and 2/3 innings pitched, just 25 hits allowed, 11 walks. That's a whip at just over 1, which is really good. 41 strikeouts, so that's well over a strikeout an inning. At 3.79 ERA, it seemed like it was Jekyll and Hyde. It was one outing, he would give up no runs. Next outing, he'd give up 4 or 5. Some of that is due to the home run ball, something he has to figure out. But he looked really, really good in the second half of last year, so much so that they gave him a shot in the postseason over a guy like Ian Anderson, who also had some really good numbers at the end of last year. Now, you can certainly, knowing what we know now, you can question that decision and whether or not it was the right call to go with a young guy who had some postseason experience, but certainly not to the level of an Ian Anderson. But that's how the Braves felt about AJ Smith-Shawver and the way that he finished this season. And I think it was warranted that he was throwing the ball really well to end the year at Gwinnett, and the Braves felt confident and comfortable giving him that start. And I've gone over that start before. Obviously getting ambushed by Fernando Tatis Jr. is not great. The velocity was down to start that game. The pitch to Fernando was 94 middle in. He just pulled his hands and, like I said, ambushed a first pitch fastball and drove it. That second inning, there were some things that kind of got away from him. But again, I think he earned that start, and I think it tells you a lot about where the Braves think he is. But what needs to happen for AJ Smith-Shawver to get on the roster and stay on the roster? An injury or an underperformance by Holmes or Anderson, if anybody else were to get injured in spring training or just have a setback, and I've talked about that before, how it always seems like the Braves have a starting pitcher or two, who gets delayed in spring training and they don't start the season on time. And you have to rely on the Bryce Elders, the Jared Schusters of the world to make some starts for you at the beginning of the year. It seems like it always happens every spring. So if that were to be the case for a Sale or a Schwellenbach or a Lopez, then AJ Smith-Shawver, I think, would be the next man up to get a shot in the rotation. Or if Ian Anderson just does not look like he's ready or deserves a chance in spring training, and AJ Smith-Shawver does, and he performs well in spring training, I could see a scenario where he starts the year in the rotation over an Ian Anderson or possibly a Grant Holmes, but it seems like the Braves are loving them some Grant Holmes right now. So again, I do think he can earn his way onto the roster, but obviously an injury, which we're not hoping for, but an injury or any kind of setback I think he'd be next man up in the rotation. But he also has to continue to show that he can work deep into games, that he can hold his velocity deep into games, that he can throw enough strikes, and that he can limit the home runs. There are things to work on for AJ Smith-Shawver, certainly. But again, I'm very excited to see the progress that he has made. One of the more frustrating things for me with Hurston Waldrop and why I docked him in my last rankings, because you just didn't see that improvement for him last year that I was hoping to see. But I think you did see some of that for AJ Smith-Shawver. His only start at the big league level last year was a short one, but he was really good and really effective. And when he came back from injury, he was really good at Gwinnett the rest of the way. So I think you did see some steps forward for AJ Smith-Shawver last year that I didn't see with a Hurston Waldrop, that has me excited about the upcoming season for AJ Smith-Shawver. Now, the upside, if this were to happen, if AJ Smith-Shawver were to get into the big league rotation, what could that look like? What could his rookie of the year resume look like? I think 20 games started. Spencer Schwellenbach started 21 last year, 3.75 ERA, a 1.20 whip, 120 innings, 135 strikeouts, something like that. I'm not projecting anything too crazy, but I think that certainly would get you in the NL Rookie of the Year conversation, depending on, what else happens. And I think AJ Smith-Shawver is certainly capable of putting up that type of line and resume. But let me know what you think. Is AJ Smith-Shawver the top pick for you, or is it our next guy that we're going to talk about? There's already plenty of buzz for Drake Baldwin in spring training. You're seeing, videos of him in BP and people talking about his swing, how good he looks. David O'Brien of The Athletic reporting that those who have pitched to him say that he has what it takes behind the plate. You've heard nothing but good things about Drake Baldwin basically all offseason. And with the year that Sean Murphy had last year, I feel like it's heightened that even more, that everybody's excited about the new shiny toy that is up on everybody's top 100 prospect list. Everybody is raving about. Everybody wants to see Drake Baldwin as the backup quarterback situation. Everybody loves the backup quarterback. He's coming off a tremendous year, and he really took off at AAA where he slashed 298, 407, 484 in 72 games, so not a small sample size. 13 doubles, 12 home runs. And what was also really impressive there is he showed good plate discipline with 52 walks and 54 strikeouts. So certainly he did everything he could at AAA last year to prove that, he's ready for a shot at the big league level. What needs to happen in order for him to get that shot? Obviously an injury to Sean Murphy, and I think Drake Baldwin's gonna get the call and get plenty of playing time. I'm not rooting for that. I'm very excited about Sean Murphy's upcoming season. Or an injury to Marcell Ozuna, which again, I'm certainly not advocating for or hoping for. Ozuna's been the best and most consistent hitter for the Braves the last 2 years. But I think there are 2 scenarios there where Drake Baldwin gets a chance. If either Murphy or Ozuna gets banged up, I think Drake Baldwin is the obvious replacement for either of those guys. So he does have 2 ways to get in there if either one of those guys get hurt. Now, you could say with Ozuna that perhaps maybe the Braves just put Acuna in the DH spot and they go back to a platoon of Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz in the outfield, but I would much rather have Baldwin just come up and play DH and get his at-bats that way and split time behind the plate with Sean Murphy, and that'd be a good way to kind of ease him in. But again, not hoping for any injuries because I'm very excited about the year for Sean Murphy and obviously Ozuna, how great he has been. Don't want anything to happen there. But those are 2 scenarios that could get Drake Baldwin in there. And look, if he goes back to AAA and just mashes for the first 2 months like he did last year, he continues to hit, 280 plus and just continues to crush the baseball and get on base and show that good plate discipline. I feel like you got to find a way to get his bat in there. I don't know how you do it. I don't think putting him in the outfield is a realistic option. And plus, if everybody's healthy in the outfield, there's nowhere to really play him. But those things seem to work themselves out. But again, how much longer do you need to see this guy slash 300, 400, nearly 500 at AAA before you get him a chance? But I just don't know what that is. And you certainly don't want him coming up and splitting time with Sean Murphy. And I don't think that's great for Sean Murphy either. One of the reasons I'm so excited about Sean Murphy's season, because I think he's going to get the bulk of the starts behind the plate. And I think that's going to be a good thing for him. The only time we've seen him get consistent playing time as a Brave was the first half of 2023 when he was excellent. He was an all-star. He was one of the best catchers in baseball. So I wouldn't want to see Baldwin come up and then it'd be an everyday thing with he and Sean Murphy like we've had with Travis d'Arnaud. I also don't want to see Baldwin come up and sit the bench for 4 or 5 games a week either. I want to see him get some at bats. So it'd be tough, but again, if he just goes back to AAA and mashes, you got to find some way to get him in the lineup. So those are the clear top 2. I mean, those are my top 2 prospects in the system: AJ Smith-Shawver, Drake Baldwin, and both of them are knocking on the door, ready for an opportunity as soon as one comes available. Like I said, whether an injury is the most likely path or for AJ Smith-Shawver, I think he has a way to earn himself into a spot in the rotation. For Drake Baldwin, it's really hard to find a way to fit him in unless an injury does occur or Sean Murphy just happens to continue to slide like he did last year and you get 2 months into the season and he's batting 200 and Drake Baldwin's crushing it at AAA, then maybe at that point you turn things, or not turn things over to Drake Baldwin, but you do call him up and start to split time there. But again, I'm not wishing that, and I'm certainly expecting big things from Sean Murphy this season. Now, the upside of Drake Baldwin does get in there. It kind of depends on his playing time and what his role is, right? If he's coming up to split time with Sean Murphy, he's probably not going to get enough games and at-bats to be really in the Rookie of the Year race. But if he comes up to be a DH and play time at catcher, I mean, you're talking about a guy who could get 115 games. And if he does that, I think he'd hit 275, get on base 33% of the time, hit 15 to 20 home runs. I mean, he's got that type of power. So that could be, his resume, which again, depending on what else happens in the National League this year, probably puts him in the discussion. Now, a deep sleeper candidate for me is going to be J.R. Ritchie. And as you know, you listen to the podcast, I love J.R. Ritchie. Had he not had Tommy John surgery in 2023 when he was taking off, he's likely knocking on the door coming into spring training this year anyway. He's still just 21, only 2 starts at high A, so there's no reason to really push him. It's not the same scenario as a Spencer Schwellenbach last year. Schwellenbach being older, being a college guy, although he doesn't have a lot of experience starting as a pitcher. So it's not, it's not apples to apples there, but I do like J.R. Ritchie a lot. I think he has shown good command and good mound presence to be able to make that transition. But again, he is still just 21, only made 2 starts at high A. But you look at Schwellenbach, he only made 9 total starts at Rome, which is high A, and only 2 starts at double A before the Braves gave him the call up to the big leagues. So I'm not expecting that to happen with J.R. Ritchie. But again, if he were to start the year at high A Rome and just go off in the first month there, and he's clearly ready for a promotion, and then he goes to double A and takes off there, kind of doing the same thing, which is always a good pitcher-friendly environment. So I could see that happening, and there's a need in the rotation. Could the Braves call him up for the last 4 months of the year and he's sticking the rotation, similar to a Schwellenbach, make 18 starts, maybe have a 3.5, 3.7 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, just over a strikeout per inning? I think J.R. Ritchie is capable of that. Again, I'm not expecting that to happen, but if you're looking for a deep sleeper, again, nobody was looking at Spencer Schwellenbach last year. J.R. Ritchie would be the one for me. Many people might look at a Lucas Braun or a Drew Hackenberg to be that, or a Blake Burkhalter. I think we could very well see those guys at some point this year. But again, as I did my prospect rankings for the Braves, I just don't think they have the upside that a J.R. Ritchie has. So I don't know that they would be as impactful. The only 2 other that I'll mention real quick, Hurston Waldrop. If the Braves wanted to put him in the bullpen immediately, I don't think they will, and I don't think they should. I think they should start him in the rotation at AAA to begin the year, let him continue to work on those things. If it doesn't happen, then maybe at the second half you start to make that transition. But if they were to go ahead and make that transition and just say, we're going to put him in the bullpen for now, see if we can get him on track with his command and focus on, a small pitch mix, and see what we can do, maybe put him back in the rotation later, then I think he can be a really good reliever and have a big impact there that maybe gets him some Rookie of the Year consideration. Got to be really tough as a reliever. He'd have to really perform well in big spots. The other one is Nacho. Look, I'm not high on Nacho Alvarez coming up and being a Rookie of the Year type of player, but the Braves don't have a lot of great depth at the middle infield position. So if Arcia or Albies gets hurt for a significant period of time, which Albies is prone to get hurt, although knock on wood, this should be the good year for Ozzy that he does stay healthy. Arcia, we know he could just completely fall flat on his face again offensively and be an automatic out at the bottom of the lineup. There is a scenario where Nacho gets a long look in 2025. And if he plays well and hits the ball and has the great plate discipline like he's had at the minor league level, there's a path there for Nacho Alvarez to be in that Rookie of the Year mix. It's kind of like J.R. Ritchie. I'm not expecting it, but I think there is a very narrow path for Nacho Alvarez to get into the mix this year. That's a lot of names I threw at you there. I mean, the 2 obvious candidates, A.J. Smith-Shawver, Drake Baldwin, J.R. Ritchie being my long shot sleeper candidate, Hurston Waldrop if he goes to the bullpen, Nacho if Arcia or Albies were to get hurt and miss significant time. And then I mentioned just briefly Burkhalter, Lucas Braun, Drew Hackenberg, some other guys that we could see get some significant innings this year as well. If there are some injuries or guys underperform, I think those would be some of the guys who are next up. So there's several candidates there. I wouldn't necessarily call them all strong candidates outside the top 2, but let me know what you think. Do you think any of these players get a really good shot at the Rookie of the Year award this year? Do you think any of them get enough innings or at bats? Because I think that could be the one thing that holds some of these guys back if they just don't get the innings or the at bats to really qualify to have enough numbers to get into the Rookie of the Year conversation. But certainly I think they have some players who are good enough to be in that discussion. But let me know what you think down in the comments section below. All right, next we'll get into some news from camp. The Braves signing Buck Farmer, adding some more depth to the bullpen. Chris Sale throws live EP, some notes on Jared Kelnick, and comments from Alex Anthopoulos. We'll get into all of that here next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets through the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action, and if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. You can also go over to FanDuel.com like I did earlier and look at the awards for the upcoming MLB season, see what the odds are there for MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year like we looked at, World Series favorites. If you're still into the NBA, you can see the odds there for who will win the NBA championship. You can check all that out at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll get into some of the news and notes for Braves camp. Braves signed reliever Buck Farmer to a minor league deal. The right-handed reliever and former Yellow Jacket pitched in 61 games with the Reds last year, posting a 3.04 ERA and 1.20 whip in 71 innings with 70 strikeouts. Kind of wild to see a reliever put up that stat line, especially in a place like Cincinnati where it's very homer-friendly, and to him have to settle for a minor league deal. But the Braves are able to snatch him up and get him into Atlanta and get him into that mix for the last rotation spot, where I'd give him really good chances to get that spot, especially coming off the year that he had. And even in 2023, he pitched in 71 games, 75 innings, 70 strikeouts, a 1.16 whip, 4.20 ERA, had a 3.83 ERA the year before that, in 47 innings with 54 strikeouts. So he's been a pretty solid reliever for several years now. You look at the xERA from last year, 4.14, 269 BABIP. I mean, that's not crazy off. Certainly he outperformed those numbers by a little bit, but those aren't wildly unrealistic numbers. His slider had a 37.6% whiff rate last year, which is really good, and a 154 xBA, which is really, really good. So his slider is definitely his dominant pitch. He throws the sinker that averages 92.5 miles per hour. His changeup had a 32.6% whiff rate last year, but a 253 xBA. So it really is that slider that he is able to dominate with and get hitters out with, and that's going to be his go-to pitch. Ground ball rate of just 36.8%. Last year, would like to see that go up a little bit, but again, gets plenty of swing and miss with that slider, and he's been really solid and really durable and reliable over the past several years as well. So I like his chances to get into the bullpen, if not to start the year because he is on a minor league deal. I think at some point I'd put him in that conversation with Jordan Weems as two guys who are not on the roster currently that we could see have a big impact for the Atlanta Braves at some point during the season on that bullpen. Chris Sale gave up nukes to Nick Allen and Connor Capella in live BP. Chris Sale is certainly cooked at this point, obviously joking there, but good to see him throwing, obviously, after ending last year with the back injury already out there, working up that pitch count. So that's great to see for Chris Sale, and good for Nick Allen. Look, it's live BP. It is what it is, but I think he's one of the favorites to get a bench job out of camp. So, take any positives that he can get right now. Jared Kelenic has reported that he was dealing with some nagging injuries in the second half of last year, maybe held him back a little bit. I've talked a lot. I thought he was playing really well early in the season last year, and then Michael Harris went down and he had to make that switch to center field. That is just a physically demanding position. A couple years ago, we were trotting Adam Duvall out there and he was really suffering at the plate. But it's just such a physically demanding position in center field. You got to cover a lot of ground, and that can have an effect on you at the plate and both with injuries as well. So I can believe that. I don't think he's totally using it as an excuse, and I don't buy it completely as an excuse for how bad he was offensively in the second half. But certainly, everybody's dealing with something throughout the season. You're going to get nicks and injuries here that are nagging and ongoing. But I don't think that's a complete reason that he collapsed in the second half. But also in an article by David O'Brien on The Athletic, he mentioned that the new hitting coaches went to Wisconsin this past winter to work with him, and that is fantastic. I told you things that I'm watching in spring training. One of them is Jared Kelenic and how the new hitting coaches are going to be working with him and hopefully getting him to recognize pitches better, have better swing decisions. That's really the downfall for Jared Kelenic. When he makes contact, it's really good. He just makes some terrible swing decisions So good to hear that the hitting coaches are already working with him and hopefully can get him on track. Some comments from Alex Anthopoulos presser that he had over the weekend said Joe Jimenez is the only loss they haven't been able to account for yet. That was before the Buck Farmer move. I don't know that Buck Farmer is the answer for Joe Jimenez. I would say that it isn't. I'd still want him to go get a David Robertson. That's the answer to me, or a Kyle Finnegan. But he did admit that they haven't been able to replace that in the bullpen. But as I often say, bullpen is something you can fix more easily during a season, and you have guys kind of step up as well. So I'm not as worried about that, but it is kind of wild to see Alex Anthopoulos, who has gone over the top to have his bullpens ready for the season, wouldn't sure that up before the year begins. And AA said the same thing he did early in the offseason when looking at free agent starting pitchers. They have to decide if they think they're better than a Grant Holmes because they don't want to block him. It sounds like they're really high on Grant Holmes, and I am not trying to dismiss that. I just think that is very risky when you are putting a lot of eggs in the basket of a Grant Holmes, who hasn't been a starter long-term in a while. Yes, he threw a lot of innings last year. You could see him get up to 140, 150 maybe this year. I think probably max. But first of all, can he do it? Can he go consistently, get through a lineup 2 and 3 times and go 5-6 innings a start? How many innings can you get out of him? I just think it's very risky. And like I said, even if you love Grant Holmes, and even if he is going to be a breakout, and I'm not saying he's not, because he did do some good things last year where you could see the upside. Go get a Kyle Gibson, go get a Jose Quintana. Just give yourself that insurance. Go to a 6-man rotation if you need to. But it sounds like they're not going to get a Kyle Gibson or Jose Quintana because they can't say definitively. And I agree that either one of them would be better than a Grant Holmes. But it's not so much about those guys being better than Grant Holmes as it is just giving yourself the quality depth in the rotation to get through the season. And that's where I think Alex is missing on this. Now, some news around Major League Baseball. Geraldo Perdomo agrees to a 4-year, $45 million contract extension with the Diamondbacks. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, are they going to trade Jordan Lawler now? I don't think so. Suarez's contract is up after this year. They could probably move Lawler over to third base. I had a Diamondbacks fan reach out to me during the offseason when we were talking about the potential of trading for Perdomo, and they mentioned that Diamondbacks love Perdomo, that he's a leader in that clubhouse, and this kind of proves that, and the fact they were wanting to go ahead and lock him up. The Guardians signed John Means. Mike Trout moving to right field to preserve his health. Please stay healthy, Mike Trout. Eddie Rosario signed a minor league deal with the Dodgers. Luke Jackson, a minor league deal with the Rangers. Mets pitcher Frankie Montas has a lat strain that will shut him down for 6 to 8 weeks. Unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of injury news over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully the Braves can avoid it. Jack Peterson getting some reps at first base. I think that's pretty interesting. Find other ways to get him in the lineup. The Nats are potentially signing Lucas Sims, and the Padres signing Yuli Gurriel. So a couple of former Braves there as well. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for joining me today. Barry Snively says, I absolutely love Hackenberg. So there's one vote for Hackenberg as a Rookie of the Year candidate. Gene C. Gordy in here as well. Jack Norton, Miguel Fria, Braves Thrills, Duval T87. I hope Kelnick improves more this season. Me too. PJ's Braves, even if Holmes and Anderson perform well, the number of innings they contribute will be a factor. And that's where I think AA is dropping the ball on this. Those guys could be great, but you're expecting, for them to get you 160, 170 innings. That just seems unrealistic. Thank you all for joining me, though, on today's podcast. Thank you so much for your comments. Leave me some more down in the comment section below on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Follow us on social media at shortstopball and at LockedOn_Braves on X, and over on Instagram at LockedOnBraves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.